Right. It is 3:30 p.m. on January 25th, 2024, and I will call the Metro Flood Diversion Authority Board meeting to order. Could I get a roll call, please?
Mayor Carlson.
Here.
Mayor Dardis.
Here.
Mayor Mahoney.
Here.
Mr. Peterson.
I'm here.
Mr. Hendrickson.
Here.
Mr. Pepcorn.
Here.
Mr. Ebinger.
Here.
Mr. Strand.
Here.
Mr. Campbell.
Here.
Mrs. Shirley.
I'm here.
Mr. Grinberg.
Here.
Mr. Olson.
Here.
Mr. Selchwold.
Here.
And we have everybody here today.
Wow.
Every single seat is full. This is pretty incredible and a great way to start the year.
Good job, Chairman.
Thank you. Thank you, Commissioner Peterson. Moving on to number 2, the approval of the meeting minutes from December 14th, 2023. Do I have a motion to approve the meeting minutes?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All right, any opposed? That motion carries. Moving on to approving the minutes of the January 4th, 2025 special meeting. Do I have a motion to approve that?
Move for approval. Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries as well. Do I have a motion to approve the order of the agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Seeing none, that motion carries as well. Moving on to the consent agenda. This is a finance report, voucher approval, and a DA board approval for contracted actions. All of this is on the consent agenda and in our packet. So I would be looking for a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I move approval. Second.
A motion, and a second. Any questions or comments? Seeing none, roll call vote, please.
Mayor Carlson.
Yes.
Mayor Dardis.
Yes.
Mayor Mahoney.
Yes.
Mr. Peterson.
Yes.
Mr. Hendrickson.
Yes.
Mr. Pepcorn.
Aye.
Mr. Ebinger.
Aye.
Mr. Strand.
Yes.
Mr. Campbell.
Yes.
Mrs. Shirley.
Yes.
Mr. Grinberg.
Aye.
Mr. Olson.
Yes.
Mr. Selchwold.
Aye.
And that is everyone.
All right, thank you very much, Don. Moving on to number 5, the Executive Director report, and I will turn this portion of the agenda over to our Executive Director, Joel Paulson.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair and members of the board. A few things happened this last month. I think probably the most notable was the Red River Basin Commission Conference, and I know a number of board members also took part in that conference. I can't really stress the importance of this organization. I mean, it's just great for collaboration and communication with our neighbors to the north and the things going on in the Red River Basin itself. I gave a construction update, kind of gave the status of the project, received a number of questions about the progress, and overall, a lot of interest in the project, of course. A few other items. We have completed the annual construction and monitoring report. That's a Minnesota DNR requirement. So that will be going to the DNR to give them an update on where we are with construction. We have multiple work packages going out for bids right now. I was also invited to serve on a P3 advisory board. So I think that's great national significance for our project and the interest in how we did what we did with our P3 contract. And then we started to kick off operation and maintenance meetings with member entities. So we had Moorhead this week. We had Clay County a few weeks ago, I believe, and the city of Fargo. So as the discussion with the diversion board as far as operation and maintenance goes, that's moving forward. We do intend to start compiling scope items and preliminary budget analysis of what operation and maintenance will look like in the future in hopes to present that to the board probably later this year. So with that, certainly open for any questions that the board might have.
Thank you, Director Paulson. Any questions from board members? All right, seeing none, we will move on to number 6, General Counsel update, and I'll turn this portion of the agenda over to John Shockley.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The first item that I have for the board's consideration is the resolution consenting to the issuance of temporary refunding improvement bonds by the Cass County Joint Water Resource District. The board may recall that 3 years ago, the Cass County Joint Water Resource District had issued temporary bonds to refund the Wells Fargo loans that were outstanding and held by Cass County and the city of Fargo. Under North Dakota law, temporary bonds have a 3-year maturity. So 3 years has already passed, and so we're going to go ahead and renew those for an additional 3 years through the end of construction. And so as part of the joint powers agreement, this board has to consent to that issuance. If you did not consent to the issuance, we'd have to pay them off, and that's currently not part of our finance plan. But it's sort of been operating in the background, and now we're getting ready for the issuance. Certainly answer any questions. Finance Committee did recommend approval of this item.
Thank you, Mr. Shockley. Any questions from the board? Okay, this is an action item, so would be looking for a motion to approve this resolution.
Motion to approve. Second.
Did you get that done? All right. I have a motion and a second. Any questions or comments during that motion? Seeing none, roll call vote, please.
Mayor Carlson.
Yes.
Mayor Dardis.
Yes.
Mayor Mahoney.
Aye.
Mr. Peterson.
Yes.
Mr. Hendrickson.
Aye.
Mr. Pepcorn.
Aye.
Mr. Ebninger.
Aye.
Mr. Strand.
Yes.
Mr. Campbell.
Yes.
Mrs. Sherling.
Yes.
Mr. Grinberg.
Aye.
Mr. Olson.
Yes.
Mr. Seldgevold.
Aye.
That is everyone.
All right, and that motion carries.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The next item I have for the board's consideration is a housekeeping item that at the first meeting every year, the authority board needs to confirm the appointments of the different members to the Diversion Authority Board and Land Management, Finance, and Planning Committees. Staff had reached out to the different member entities, confirmed their appointments, which you'll see in Exhibit A. And so this is really part of the organizational process for the authority, so you'd need a motion and a second to confirm those appointments.
All right, thank you. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All right, seeing none, I know this is listed as a roll call vote, but I think that because of the fact every single one of our board members are here, we can just go with a voice call. So all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, that motion carries. On to C.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The final item is the pursuant to the Joint Powers Agreement. At this meeting, you need to elect a vice chair, which must be a North Dakota member from one of the North Dakota member entities, since currently a Minnesota member is serving as chair.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Shockley. With that, do I have any nominations for the role of vice chair for the Diversion Authority Board?
Madam Chair,
Yes, Commissioner Peterson.
nominate Commissioner Grinberg, please.
Okay. So I have a motion to nominate Commissioner Grinberg.
Second.
And a second. Any other? I have a motion and a second. So with that, how do I do this?
Nomination cease and cast unanimous
Do we
ballot.
want any other nominations? Do I take any?
Second that.
I move nomination cease and cast unanimous ballot.
Okay, so nominations cease with a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye for
Aye.
that motion.
Aye.
No.
Was that an emphatic one or just under your breath? So nominations have ceased. And I have a motion and a second on the table for the nomination of Commissioner Grinberg to be the vice chair. Any questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor, I know this is roll call vote as well. But again, all of our board members are here, so we'll just do a voice call. So all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries. Congratulations, Commissioner Grinberg. You're out, yeah. All right. Thank you, Mr. Shockley. Moving on to number 7, construction project updates. And I believe Terry Williams is on the phone. So I will turn it over to Ms. Williams.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and board members, and I'm happy to be presenting the first CORS update of the new year. Number 1, the diversion inlet structure. We've been at 99% for quite a while and have briefly touched on that everything is complete except the gate machinery, and it's going to take several weeks to finalize and install the required alterations to the gate machinery, and then do the training and commissioning on the entire structure. Number 2, the Wild Rice River structure is reported last time. The completion date of 3 December was not met due to remaining work, and the remaining work, some of it really needs to be done in better weather in the spring in a couple months here. Number 3, I-29 raise. The only thing new to report is that we are diving into preparing the O&M documents to include coordinating with the North Dakota DOT and getting ready to turn that over for O&M. Number 4, the Red River structure that's covered in the drone footage today. We're at 49% complete. We did have a concrete pour recently, but Ames is pretty much shut down until March. There is a hold point inspection at G&G Steel in Alabama on the gates in a couple weeks here. So the gate manufacturing down in Alabama is ongoing. Number 5, Drain 27, nothing new to report. Number 6, Drayton Dam, really in the midst of preparing the O&M manual for that project. Number 7, Reach SC2A, still contractors still shut down. And then we'll move into bids and remaining design. So SC1B, we did have a bid opening today, and I can quickly report some preliminary results. We had 3 bidders. And the low bidder came in at about $13.2 million, and the independent government estimate was $14.8 million. So I think we got some nice bids today. SC2B, the bid opening is scheduled for 1 February. Oxley, Hicks, and Bakke, the bid opening is currently 30 January. And you can see the remaining items we're coming down to the last stretch in getting SC4, 3 and 5 designs complete. We do have another contract out on the street. It's an environmental restoration contract, or it's forest mitigation for all of the forest impacts, projects impacts to floodplain forests. And the bid opening for that is currently scheduled for 20 February. That ends my update, Madam Chair, unless there's any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Williams. Are there any questions for Ms. Williams? There are none. So moving on to 7B, this would be turning over to Chris Bakke.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Board members, a quick update today on the status of the channel construction. We were able to extend the interim completion on a couple of segments today. The Drain 29 inlet was connected to the diversion channel, which would be the first drain inlet that we've connected that will function into the channel. And by doing that, we also were able to remove one of our plugs on County Road 31. So now the channel is functional from County Road 4 downstream to the outlet, which then includes Drain 29. So again, another nice progress step. So we've got that one marked to show the functional completion. It's certainly, there's still work to do in those areas, but the channel itself will carry water and provide some drainage for us in the spring and summer for sure. A couple other notes on the Maple River Aqueduct. I think we reported that we did or planned to do our first pour in December. That did happen. They also are planning to do their second foundation pour next week. The nicer weather certainly has helped them in those regards. Made some of the channel excavation a little more challenging because the ground's softer than they anticipated, but overall construction progress is moving along. In the field, they did shut down for a couple of weeks when it was below zero, but generally when they're above zero, they're working on both channel and structures work. They're working on quite a few of the bridges. Actually, we're geared up that probably in the next month or month and a half, we should have some beams set on a couple of our bridges. So making nice progress there, getting up to the superstructure side of things. That's the main construction updates for today. If you have any questions on that, or otherwise I can step into the safety update as well.
Thank you. Any questions or comments from the board? Commissioner Schirling.
Thank you. Just curious, when Will we be at a point this spring, should we have some rural flooding, that there will be actual passive drainage then for us in that Argusville area?
In the Argusville area, there will be a limited amount. The drainage north of County Road 4, yes. We do have to leave the County Road 4. The channel is still blocked there. And then once you get back to I-29, so yeah, a limited amount, but there will be a little bit of drainage that we'll be able to move into the channel starting this spring. So.
Will there be any hindrance, any problems it's creating temporarily for those areas?
No, all of the current drainage across the channel is still connected. So the existing drains will still move across the channel. That's part of the reason for the plugs until everything lines up. The road plugs and the existing drainage still connects across the channel. So water will still flow generally how it does today, but it won't necessarily gain the benefit of the channel quite yet south of County Road 4.
Great, thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions? Okay, doesn't seem to be any, so you can move on to the next
All right,
agenda
so
item.
we'll do a quick safety update. Just as a reminder, but the timing of our November and December board meetings, we got off a little bit. So we're going to present both the November and December safety updates today. We probably hit a little bit of the November overlap in December, but we'll cover them both. There were two, you look at the safety incidents, they're not anything of significance in November or December. A couple of recordables you'll see, all very minor and nothing that was a major issue. And December was a very good month. The bar charts you show there for the channel, you also see that there was one minor incident on a Fargo project, but didn't result in any lost time. But it was a minor incident there. Otherwise, no other safety issues for the last couple months.
All right, comments or questions from that? Go ahead.
What about year-to-date?
The year-to-date piece would be the dark blue circle,
Okay,
or the dark
right.
blue charts are an ongoing accumulative, and the lighter blue are just the month reported. So thanks for clarifying that, Roger. That I should have distinguished that. So yep.
Any other comments or questions? See none, we can move
We're
on
up
to
the
drone
drone updates
footage.
next.
Recent frigid temps have slowed construction on some components, but excavation and other work continues around the clock on the FM Area Diversion Project. I'm Tom Fuchs, the Senior Construction Manager for the Metro Flood Diversion Authority, with the latest construction updates. Our drone view starts at the 30-mile stormwater diversion channel, where crews continue to excavate day and night. Work is focused on reaches 4 and 5, which are north and west of the FM Metro. Channel excavation to date has now surpassed 16.3 million cubic yards. For perspective, that's enough material to rebuild the Great Pyramid of Giza 5 more times. While main channel excavation continues farther upstream, when the time is right, crews will fall back and excavate portions that have been left in place for logistical reasons. For instance, after completing Drain 29 inlet last month, ASN Constructors is now excavating the channel where Drain 29 formerly crossed the right-of-way. This adds another 1-mile segment of functional channel at its downstream end. Work is also happening south of I-94 at the new Drain 14C inlet. ASN Constructors continues excavating the drain inlet channel, and they recently installed sheet piles, formwork, and rebar for the first concrete placements, which will make up the baffled chute drop structure at the inlet's downstream end. When completed, the new drop structure will dissipate energy and combat erosion as inflows are passed directly from Drain 14 into the stormwater diversion channel. Speaking of concrete work, the first large placement at the Maple River Aqueduct is now complete. About 1,200 cubic yards was placed in late December for the aqueduct's flume and conduit structure footing. The warmer than expected temperatures early this month also allowed work to extend at the Red River structure site, with one more concrete placement of just over 600 cubic yards at the structure's west pier. Work is also taking place at several channel crossings. This includes installing shoe fly track at BNSF Hillsboro and building bridge substructure elements, including abutments and piers at the County Road 4 and 31 combined crossing. If you'd like to meet some of the people behind this work, sign up for our monthly newsletter, The Diversion Current.
All right, moving on to number 8, a communications team update. Turning this over to Amy.
Good afternoon, Madam Chairwoman, and members of the board. I have a quick communications update. At the top, we have a list of some of the videos that we recently released. You had a chance to see the year in review last time. Faces of the Diversion, we interviewed Corey and Alex, their geotechnical engineers with ASN, who really had some great information that we shared in the newsletter. And then in partnership with them and some of our engineers, we developed a couple of animation videos to better explain some of the working conditions, especially with the soil in the Red River Valley and how unique that is. So those were all in the January newsletter, which again, we kicked off the year with some strong performance there. 62% opened and nearly 20% clicked through to take a look at the information in more depth. We also had 9 short form video updates that we released since mid-December. Some of those are just brief project updates from the sites, but others are pieces that we're taking from footage that we already have. So we have a chance to reuse some of that information. Regarding media relations, we sent a press release regarding the change in the board chairperson. And then we've also been working on some of the plans for 2024, including updating the emergency and crisis communications plan and putting together our editorial calendar for the year. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Any questions or comments for Amy? All right, seeing none, moving on to land management update, and I will turn this over to Ms. Smith.
Yes, thank you so much. On the maps that you have before you, as you can see on the left-hand side, everything in the channel has been acquired. We're still waiting to close on a couple of those properties. Down in the UMA area, it's a little bit easier to see on the map on the right-hand side. Everything in green is the property rights that we have acquired. Everything in blue is still in negotiation. Those listed in the orange are those that eminent domain has been filed on. If you scroll to the next one, you can see we've had a little bit of progress over the past month. We have completed some acquisitions along the construction footprint, and we do continue to make progress in the upstream mitigation area. On this next slide, you can see an increase in the southern embankment associated infrastructure. Again, those are closures that are primarily occurring over on SE4 and SE5 on the Minnesota side, slight increase in the UMA, and of course a slight increase in environmental monitoring easements. The next slide breaks down the statistics between the construction footprint and the UMA footprint. And then of course on the last slide, it's just an overall update. We do continue negotiating settlement agreements for those that are in the eminent domain process. I know Chris McShane at Onstead Twitchell and I have several settlement offers sitting out with property owners that have entered into eminent domain or we're prepared to file eminent domain on. In the last month, we did close on 13 parcels. That does include 8 property owners. We are scheduled to close an additional 18 this month. I know some of those had to be rescheduled for February, but I was just looking at the closing list, and it's a pretty significant closings that will be occurring in February and in March. We are continuing to work on those properties that have been deemed excess, particularly on SE1. 2 of the 3 property owners have determined that they would like to acquire the property that was made available. We do have one that has declined the offer, so we're going through the excess lands policy. We'll be offering those parcels to the neighboring property owners. There's a third parcel that has not gone out yet, if you recall. Now, it's almost a full quarter section at the northern portion of the channel. I'm still waiting for an appraisal to come in so we can deem the appropriate market value before going through the excess lands policy. And then of course we began a farmland leasing for the 2024 season. So I'm open to any questions that you might have.
Thanks, Ms. Smith. Go ahead.
Thank you. I'm curious about the excess land repurchases. Are we seeing a variance in the repurchasing price versus our purchasing price originally? And how is that shaking out?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, Chairwoman and Commissioner Strand, the way we did this with the market analysis is a little bit different per parcel. So, the ones on SE1, if you recall, and I know it's been a couple of months and I don't have a map available, but they're very slim. And really, what had happened is the Corps had asked that we go ahead and start acquiring property. We acquired it based off some preliminary drawings. When we got their final design, what we found is there's a couple of acres, just very long and narrow along the roadway. We are actually offering that back to the property owners at the price we purchased it at. So that's one circumstance. The parcels that at the very northern end of the channel, that full quarter section, we will not be offering at the price we purchased it at. We're waiting for that appraisal to come back in. So it's kind of it's a parcel by parcel decision that we're making. I'm hoping to get enough material together that we'll be bringing some forward in February. Again, you're going to see a variance with there as well. If they're stranded parcels, so they're very isolated, they're difficult to access, most likely my recommendation to Mr. Paulson will be that we sell those at the purchase price that we got them. But if there is any way to access them or there's value to it, then we will place a market value on that. And that market value can either be determined by doing a full appraisal, or it can just be done by a market analysis that we can complete internally and then make a recommendation to move that forward. So not a very simple answer, eh?
Madam Chairman, I continue.
Yes.
If we have a situation where their time has lapsed and the sea changes happened and valuations have gone up versus what we purchased them, are we looking to profit on those parcels, or are we going to cap it at what they were paid?
So Chairwoman and then Commissioner Strand, what the excess lands policy says is we need to sell it at market value. So I'm not saying that we're looking to profit from it, but we do need to determine what market value is. And again, a lot of variables will go into that, if it's difficult to access, if it's whatever. Some of them have a right of first offer on it, and that was a part of their settlement and negotiation. So if we went to sell that parcel within so many years of acquiring it for them, typically it's 5 years, then most of those obligations are that we would sell it back to them at the price that we purchased it at. If it's beyond that 5 years or they didn't have that ROFO sitting on it, then we are under an obligation to sell it at market value. But again, that market value can be determined by multiple factors. So at this point, the majority of what we have proposed for sale is really at the price we've purchased it as, but that's very intentional because we are holding on to our excess lands in hopes to be able to use it as a tool with settlement negotiations. So there's not very valuable land that really we've been offering up. That parcel at the very northern end of this channel is the first one that would probably go up significantly in value from the price that we purchased it as, and that was really a test subject for me. I know that the excess lands policy was developed several years ago. I want to make sure that policy is behaving with the way and manner that the board intended it to prior to, pushing, more valuable property through that policy. So in case we need to make any amendments to it.
Okay. Any other comments or questions from board members? All right, seeing none.
Thank you.
Thank you. And moving on to number 10, finance update. Mayor Dargis.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Finance Committee met yesterday. We had $6,725,370.67 presented as bills in December. And also, we have a net cash position of $211,183,891. We also heard the item that Mr. Shockley presented today with regarding to the issuance of the 2024 A bonds. We dealt with that. And also there was the election of a vice chairman of the Finance Committee, Mr. Rick Steen, who had been serving in that capacity, was asked to serve again, and he has consented to that, and the Finance Committee approved that vote. So that's all I have.
Thank you, Mayor Dargis. Any questions for Mayor Dargis? All right, seeing none, we will move on to the South University Flood Wall Repair Project, and I will turn that over to Executive Director Joel Paulson.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board. In November, we had a discussion at the board level about this topic. South University Drive flood wall. There is damage currently to this portion of flood wall within the city of Fargo's flood protection, and it needs to be repaired. There were a few questions that were asked by the board, and so we went back and we have some answers for you. First question was, is this flood wall contained under either the city of Fargo's insurance policy or the authorities? And Mr. Shockley looked into that, and it is not contained under either insurance policy. So there's no avenue there to acquire funding for the repair of the project. The second request by the board was to engage the State Water Commission to see if there's state funding that could be accessed for this project. The city of Fargo did have a meeting with the Department of Water Resources, and the conclusion from that discussion was that there was no money available for the repair of this project, and that it would not be eligible for state funding. So with no other funding source and the responsibility of the authority, this was brought back to the Planning Committee for discussion. And it was the recommendation of the Planning Committee to utilize the contingency in our program budget under the local flood protection item for the city of Fargo to pay for the proposed fix. That was also then presented at Finance Committee yesterday, and the Finance Committee also recommended to the Diversion Board today that we move forward with utilizing the contingency in the local flood protection item and increasing the 2024 cash budget to accommodate the $4.8 million cost. So with that, this is an actionable item. I do have a proposed motion there. That was also the motion that was presented at the Finance Committee as well.
Thank you, Mr. Paulson. Any questions or comments? Commissioner Strand.
Thank you. Joel, this begs the question, what other risks are there for other flood walls, and what are we facing down the road? And how are we covered if it happens?
It's a great question, Commissioner Strand, and I have had numerous discussions with Nathan Borboom about, a monitoring of the levee system in town. And just for your awareness, the levees are inspected on an annual basis, both in Fargo and in Moorhead. Because of what we've experienced with this particular flood wall, it's my understanding that the city of Fargo is actively monitoring other locations for any potential movement, and they have acquired a consultant to perform that monitoring. I think this location in particular is somewhat unique because of how close it is to the river, and the constraints with the cemetery and University Drive being directly adjacent to it. We did notice, looking back over the course of the last decade, the riverbank at this location has moved quite significantly, which resulted in the slumping failure of the bank. Now we have armored that bank now, and this fix will be a permanent fix for that flood wall to keep it at the location that it's currently at. So to answer your question, yes, we are monitoring other locations. We don't see anything of significance of this nature at the moment, but it certainly is something that we need to monitor long-term through operation and maintenance of the project, and make sure that we're doing our due diligence to either shore up or prevent slumping from occurring. And then, of course, addressing issues related to slumping if it were to occur.
Go ahead.
How many years was it from construction till failure?
I'm looking at Nathan. I believe it was 2009. Does that sound about right? Yeah. So the project was implemented in 2009, and I believe failure was noticed a few years ago. But and the city began monitoring that a few years ago to see is it just moving a little bit, and then is it going to stabilize? But as the monitoring indicated that there was continued bank stability issues, the riprap project along the river was then implemented, and that was completed this summer to basically stop the erosion of the riverbank. And then this project will then reinforce the flood wall to keep it in its current location and prevent it from moving as the bank slumps around it.
Madam Chair, one line and I'm done. Were these designed for 37-foot flow?
That's correct.
They were, so that's not a change in after we've negotiated the height of the water going through.
No, these levees are required to pass 37 feet through town. Yeah.
Commissioner Strand, is that, okay. Any other questions? Mayor Dardis.
I refrained from bringing this item up in the finance report because I knew that Mr. Paulson would be addressing it. The $4,895,000 cost that's incorporated with this is an engineer's estimate. So if there's additional costs over and above that, when all the geotechnical and everything else gets involved, it will come back before the finance committee first before we bring it to the board. But that's a kind of a placeholder of what we anticipate based on the expertise of our experts of what this cost might be.
Thank you, Mayor Dardis. And I would just, emphasize that Nathan gave us some really good information about that this is a very, very unique place in Fargo where this slumpy was occurring, and I don't anticipate, and I think he was affirming that we're anticipating that this is going to be happening with other levees. It's just such a unique spot within the city of Fargo.
Madam Chairman, I'd also
ahead.
like to state that the finance committee passed this through unanimously onto the board, that this should be paid. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Dardis. Any other questions or comments?
Madam Chair, I'd move the motion as presented.
Okay, I have a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
A motion and a second. One last time for questions or comments. Commissioner Strand?
The dumbest question in the world. What are our options if we don't? Are there any options?
The do nothing option would basically accept that the flood wall is slumping and uncertifiable. Our concern is if the river bank continues to slump without stabilizing this wall, that the location of the wall would have to be pushed west, which would then impact the alignment of University Drive. And because it's constrained between the Sunset Garden Cemetery, there's really no place to relocate University Drive. So it would certainly create a whole host of additional problems as far as how to maintain that important transportation corridor in Fargo.
Right. Commissioner Campbell?
Maybe a follow-up to Mr. Strand's questions. I think what's really important here is, the fact of the matter is we've got a project that started in 2009, and some of these components of this project now, it's probably going to have to be expected that we're going to have to see some maintenance done to these. To me, this is a maintenance issue that ultimately, and I'm thankful, for example, that in Clay County, we've talked about now what are the assets that are going to be part of this project. I think each entity is doing that to get that. But ultimately, I think it's going to be important for us to understand that this contingency is not meant to cover these costs of these types of maintenance items. So ultimately, we're going to have to come up with our financial plan that's going to bring in the revenue that's going to be needed over time to cover their operations and maintenance. And I think the staff is working diligently on that process right now. But you raised some really good questions, and ultimately, we can't depend on contingency. And the sooner we can get this going, and I think everybody's going to have to do their part in understanding. Certainly the channel, I think, has the channel component of this has the maintenance built in for a period of time, but a lot of the other components do not. And so we're going to have to come up with that revenue source to cover that.
Thank you, Commissioner Campbell. Commissioner Strand?
Bear with me, folks, but I'm reminded, this is not my language. You are engineers, it is your world. But I'm remembering Oak Grove and a breakage in the protection there and how that impacted a whole neighborhood. I'm remembering the Belmont Drive in Grand Forks dike breaking and the beginning of the whole town going. So this really concerns me. When we have decades and decades and decades of internal protection, and already just a few years later, we've found a weak spot. And I'm glad they found it proactively. But my goodness, the concerns, the potential risk of a breached wall, I'm just not even sure how to calculate my concerns.
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner Strand. Manager Olson.
I would agree with Commissioner Strand. I'm concerned also. 15 years is not very long when you have built supposedly permanent flood protection. My concern is the engineering firm that initially designed that, were they looking at a permanent situation, something that would last 30, 50, 75 years, or were they looking at something that would get you by for a while? And when I look at the failure and the area that it's in, it certainly should have been thought, you know what, maybe we need to go a little deeper, maybe we need to do something better when it was initially put in. And my concern is the same engineering firm that did it the first time is going to do it the second time. It's a concern, and I guess that's where I'm at. That's my comment. I backed this as it came through our committee, and I'll back it here. But certainly these are concerns, and I think John is hitting the nail with the hammer. These are concerns.
Thank you.
And let's make sure that we don't have a lot of expense added on. I don't want, I'm going to continue, I got the soapbox here. I don't want us to start assessing the people that we've said that we could assess if we need it. I don't want them to be assessed and to certify that assessment because of items like this that weren't engineered to be permanent. Thank you.
Thank you, Manager Olson. Mayor Mahoney.
Roger, I agree with your assessment, but in some ways you have to understand the topography of this community and where we sit. And we sit on clay, and clay is going to have its failures. The reality is, if we look at Shockley's model in which how we function, there are some areas that there will be more revenue coming in as we get drain tax or other types of taxes come in. The tax assessment district we should not need, but there are we should probably make the board aware of what the intent is once the completion of the project is done. And to Kevin's comment, the O&M and what it's going to do and what each one of us as an entity is going to happen. I think with the clay, most engineers, well, I can tell you in roadways, we've learned a lot over time and how the clay is difficult to work with. I don't think it's unusual. We will have some failures. We're going to have some failures in this project, but concur, hopefully we learn from each failure and engineer to such a manner that we have minimal amount of failures. And I think that's been the difficulty even building through the city. We have flood walls, we have clay dikes, we have a variety of different things. And the clay is a formidable opponent because it slumps, it does a variety of different things. We get rain, we get snow, we get drought, all those influences. So it's a difficult material to work with. And I think, at least in our discussions with John Shockley, our financial plan is built and over time has an O&M for these types of issues that would not come out of contingency, but would come out of a funding that we have set up. So I would just like to reiterate, we're not intending the tax assessment district ever to trigger. We will have protections and monetary revenue coming to us that will help manage these issues.
All right, anyone else? All right, with that, there was a motion and a second on the floor. I think that this was good discussion. It is again, this is a very unique area. Having a situation in Moorhead where they needed to rebuild a few things due to this clay slumping. Some areas are going to take more intense engineering than perhaps others. So with that, get a roll call vote, please, on this motion.
Mayor Carlson?
Yes.
Mayor Dardis?
Yes.
Mayor Mahoney?
Aye.
Mr. Peterson?
Yes.
Mr. Hendrickson?
Aye.
Mr. Pepcorn?
Aye.
Mr. Ebinger?
Aye.
Mr. Strand?
No.
Mr. Campbell,
Yes.
Mrs. Charlene,
Yes.
Mr. Grinberg,
Aye.
Mr. Olson,
Yes.
Mr. Salzwald,
Aye.
and that is everyone.
All right, and that motion carries. Moving on to the 2024 final cash budget, and I'll turn that back over to you, Mr. Paulson.
Well, thank you very much. So we are bringing a final draft before the board today. As the board's aware, we have spent many months on this, and the finance committee has worked very diligently. We have a proposed budget, a cash budget for 24 of $211,418,727. Oh, this one, the one I have. Oh, sorry. Paul just informed me that the one that we handed out to you today is revised to include the South University Drive item that we just discussed. So that is the new number being proposed for the final draft for approval of the board today. Certainly available for any questions that you might have.
Thank you, Mr. Paulson. Are there any questions?
Move for approval.
Second.
Okay, a motion and a second. Again, one more opportunity. Any questions or comments? Seeing none, this is another roll call vote. Go
Mayor
ahead.
Carlson,
Yes.
Mayor Dardis,
Yes.
Mayor Mahoney,
Aye.
Mr. Peterson,
Yes.
Mr. Hendrickson,
Yes.
Mr. Pepcorn, Mr. Ebinger,
Aye.
Mr. Strand,
Yes.
Mr. Campbell,
Yes.
Mrs. Charlene,
Yes.
Mr. Grinberg,
Aye.
Mr. Olson,
Yes.
Mr. Salzwald,
Aye.
and that is everyone.
All right, and that motion carries. So moving on to other business, we have the Metro Flood Diversion Authority 2024 calendar of meetings. Joel, I have you down as this item, I guess.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Nothing much to report here. This is consistent with the timing that we are currently using for committee and board meetings. So if there's any questions, certainly available.
Commissioner Strand.
Just regarding the MetroCog conflict with November and December, how do we usually resolve that double schedule of meetings in the same space and time?
Yeah, so because we have our board meetings on the Thursday, which ends up being Thanksgiving, we end up moving that forward, and it does conflict with MetroCog. So it is something that we could look at, trying to change a different date or time during the week to do it. But in past years, we've traditionally just moved that up a week, and it does conflict with that MetroCog meeting.
Several of us are in the MetroCog policy board. That's my point. And we'd create a gap if all of a sudden we make us choose where we're going to be.
All right.
We could perhaps look at that further as we progress throughout the year. For the time being, would I have a motion to approve the 2024 calendar of meetings?
Second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Any further comment?
Can you perhaps work with MetroCog and look at that sooner than later? Because it's either they move up earlier or we move up earlier and then they meet at 4. But 4 of my commissioners are on that, so that would wipe out ours. I don't know how many people more. Chuck, you seem to be nodding your head. So maybe not to directly conflict them. Let's look at a way we can manage to do this.
Yep, we'll work on that. So for the time being, we'll approve this one and then we'll bring a revised dates for November or December. The next, either February or March. So, any other comments? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries. All right, the next is just to announce our next meeting, which is February 22nd, 2024. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All right. Any opposed? Anyone want to stay? Nope. Okay, that motion carries. We are adjourned.